At MIT Solve, we believe that young people hold the empathy, power, and ingenuity to solve world problems.
This is why we launched SolveEd, a new program designed to encourage, inspire, and support young people to become problem solvers in our own communities
and across the world.
We are bringing together a community of education providers, youth organizations, and other cross-sector leaders
to equip young people with knowledge, tools, and resources to practice problem identification and solution design.
If you want to create positive change and join a global community of young problem solvers,
come solve with us.
Come solve with us.
Come solve with us.
Please welcome to the stage Ayatayo Ogunmola, CEO, Utiva, and a member of the judging panel for the inaugural SolveEd Youth Innovation Challenge.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the closing plenary and to what I actually think is the most exciting segment. I am personally about to officially announce to you and introduce to you the SolveEd innovators, the winners of the first ever Youth Innovation Challenge. My name is Ayatayo. I am the Chief Executive of Utiva. Utiva is a technology workforce development company that helps Africans to learn advanced technology skills and move into new jobs. We partner with companies to help them train and also hire the best talent on the continent. Utiva is a solver team, and so it's a pleasure to support the next generation of young problem solvers. SolveEd encourages, inspires, and also supports young people to become the community changers and also to change the world. It was launched in May 2021. The program provides resources, workshops, open innovation challenges that allows youth to experiment, learn about problem identification, and also solution design. It is run and generously supported by our sponsors, the Modridge Family Foundation, HP, EY, the Richel Foundation, the Paulsen Social Innovation Prize. Of course, if you would like to support young innovators like these organizations, please join us. I was delighted to serve as a judge of this Youth Innovation Challenge, where judges selected 10 promising young innovators to receive funding support from MIT Solve community out of over 800 applications from 148 countries. The solutions that we're going to honor today range from life-saving innovations using water intelligence to assertive reading devices to green nanotechnologies improving food security. I can confidently tell you that this newest and youngest cohort of solvers, they are on track to provide and facilitate for the world a safer, healthier, and happier place for all of us. I thank Solve for reaching out to these often untapped, cohort and community of, innovation led by young people from around the world. And so it's a great pleasure that I invite now to join me on this stage the winners of the 2021 SolveEd Innovation. Please put your hands together as I welcome them on the stage. Welcome to the stage, SolveEd 2022 Innovation Solvers. Tafazwa Chukwereti, Phyllis Mugadza, Okmayemi Etiwe, Defshi Menrota, Samuel Muyita, Elizabeth Inyamwangwe, and Olaride Olokntoye.
We are Solve Innovators. We are supporting smallholder farmers in Zimbabwe through providing on-the-go extension services via automated WhatsApp chatbot. using simple channels for maximum impact, but also leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning.
We innovate to bring change, and because we know we can destigmatize through design. When I realized that too many menstruators were excluded from the market for period products, I knew I had to become an advocate as well as an entrepreneur.
Some of us were inspired by friends and family, others by the warnings about the future of our planet. When I saw the 60 million underserved and unreached mentally ill in Nigeria, coming up with a solution was imperative. All of us took action because we were moved to do something.
Our solutions tackle a broad range of topics, and together we're already impacting the lives of over 520,000 people across 6 countries around the world.
And even though we are from different countries and communities, backgrounds and experiences, we share similarities. We know that by tapping into our interests, relationships, skills, and passion, we can support our communities and impact our climate by reducing on the food waste as a result of low shelf life of fruits and vegetables.
We know that we can lend a helping hand because we are so different from one another ourselves. We work with technology to help those most likely to be left behind, and our international experience begs of us to leave the world a better place than when we entered it.
We are restoring hope and inspiring vision to the blind and underserved. So please join us as we work together to do the work that we've been called on to do, as individuals, as peers, as solvers.
Please welcome Eliza Berg, Lead for Learning and Solve Ed Communities at MIT Solve.
Good morning. How about those amazing Solve Ed innovators, right? It's such a great way to start off our closing plenary with that amazing story of us. As lead of the Solve Ed communities, I have the pleasure to work with these younger leaders that you just heard from, who are really working to solve some really difficult challenges. It's so reassuring to see and acknowledge the hard work that they're doing every day. So now I have the pleasure to hear from another amazing voice, an entrepreneur whose passions and talents transcend categorization, but whose personality and determination perfectly capture the spirit of young leaders that we're here to celebrate. So please join me now in welcoming for a virtual fireside chat, Jamaica's first Olympic alpine skier, live from Miami, Benjamin Alexander. So Benjamin, welcome. So good to have you here. You have a really exciting and maybe somewhat unusual story. So from DJ to entrepreneur to Jamaica's first Olympic alpine skier, somewhat recently, which we're excited to hear about. It's really remarkable. So can you tell us, would you ever have guessed that this would be your life's path? And what do you think brought you to this point?
Yeah, no, I could never have imagined that I'd be sitting here talking to the students at MIT. As Jamaica's first alpine ski racer, as a young child growing up in England, skiing was something that just existed on TV. And I don't think there's any crystal ball that would have you beginning a sport, especially something as challenging as alpine ski racing, age 32, and then going to the Olympics at the age of 38, especially not for Jamaica. And so on this wacky life that I've had, as you said, which led me to modeling in Asia, working in finance, taking a left turn into my creative pursuits of DJing all around the planet, and now an alpine ski racer, there was a common thread, and that was cold, calculated, and rational kind of understanding of the risks that I was taking. As a high school student, I dreamed of studying at MIT, like you guys in the room. I had to settle for the Imperial College, where I studied electronic engineering. And I've always used that engineering mindset to kind of approach all of these crazy missions in life. Now, there have been many chance interactions along the way that have helped me to get here, and I think we can all look back at our lives and think of those moments that lubricated our pathways to get to where we finally got. But I was just realistic about my goals all the way along, and very good at setting arbitrary goals that just continue to compel me to pushing forward in those hard days when my body is aching from all the training, from a cracked rib, and just forcing myself to keep going forward in spite of adversity, such as the 2 years of training through the pandemic to finally qualify for the game. So yeah, perseverance is the big thing that got me here on this mission.
Amazing, yes. And I think for the young leaders that we just heard from too, very much aligns with some of their stories and their experiences. So we're talking about young people who are acting swiftly, acting strategically towards what they see to be solutions to some of the world's greatest challenges. So you've seen the world from many different angles and perspectives. What have been some of the more inspiring or urgent calls to action or movements that you've come across, and what really resonates with you in those?
Yeah, there was a real big one that impacted me personally on my mission to go to the Olympics. So a few hundred miles away from Michigan, 2 years ago, obviously the incident of George Floyd put a massive line in the sand as it pertains to diversity, fairness, and inclusion. And this had a huge impact on me. As I said, I was training in Wyoming, so not much diversity in Wyoming. I was a skier, not much diversity in skiing. And I was in an elite segment of skiing, that's alpine ski racing, where there's literally zero diversity. And that was normal. That was the norm for everyone until that moment. Almost within days of George Floyd's passing, journalists had reached out to me to try to find stories of racism in winter sports, to understand why there was not more diversity in winter sports. And I had none of those stories. You can't see right now, but I'm 6'6". Maybe that's why I have no stories of racism in skiing. Brands reached out to me to find ambassadors of diversity in winter sports. And at the age of 37, I became a full-time sponsored athlete. Now, this moment in Minnesota changed my own personal selfish pursuit of wanting to do something difficult to qualify for the Olympics, into becoming something more meaningful, into becoming an ambassador for diversity in winter sports. And it turned something that I thought was just going to be 2 years of my life into a lifelong mission now to bring more diversity to the winter sports, to bring more Jamaicans, more nations, and just more athletes of color to the next Winter Games. Because of this moment, I already have about half a dozen athletes I think will represent Jamaica at the 2026 Games. And I'm helping many other countries follow in my footsteps. And so that movement, that issue, that incident that happened 2 years ago was a huge moment, a turning point in my life.
Wonderful, yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I'm wondering if you can tell us what you can draw from your own experiences. So most recently, the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, which, by the way, not easy to get to when you started. So I just think that's so commendable. So the Olympics, you know, the spirit of sportsmanship, partnership, cooperation, also things that we've been talking about here at Solve for the past few days. Can you sort of tell us more about the Olympic lessons that we might take with us in this room as we head off into the world back to our respective countries and places? Yeah, tell us what lessons you've learned from the Olympics.
Well, the first one I can tell you is the combination of COVID plus China means no fun. The moment that I had in the Olympics was closer to the Squid Games than it was a normal Olympic Village experience. But look, you know, the IOC was founded almost 130 years ago with the mission of making the world a better, more peaceful place. And the Olympics are about excellence, the pinnacle of sports, but they're also about participation, about bringing more nations into this event. Now, one of the most memorable moments of my entire life was being the flag bearer for Jamaica at the opening ceremony and watching the 100 other countries come together in unity and in celebration of this kind of friendly competition. Now, on my path to qualification, obviously there aren't many Jamaican skiers. A lot of the smaller ski nations banded together. We pooled our resources of finances and knowledge to try to emulate some of the best ski nations in the world. And you know, one of the things that I learned on this path is that a lot of the skill sets, the specialized skill sets, tend to be concentrated in certain places in the world. So, for example, there's a strong concentration of sprinting talent in Jamaica. We still don't have an explanation for that. I can say categorically that I wouldn't have qualified for the Games had it not been for my time in Austria, one of the strongest ski nations on the planet. And I probably wouldn't have survived my Olympic run if it wasn't for the help from the Romanian ski technicians to help me tune my skis. Now, global problems require a global perspective to be solved. And the Olympic spirit is about competition, but supporting one another. And I think that the Olympics highlight our differences, but also celebrate them. And this is a strategy or a spirit that we can and should use when we're trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems.
Oh, amazing. Absolutely. I think, you know, yes. I think everyone in this room can relate, and we so appreciate having you join us today. Even though you're not with us in person, it's been wonderful to chat with you. Perhaps do you have any kind of final remarks or comments that you want to leave with the room?
Yeah, well, I would say this. Tune into the 2026 Games. I think they're working on what's going to be the biggest story of that Olympics. I won't be an athlete again. I'm going to become the president of the Jamaican Ski Federation and help that next generation and help them be much better athletes than I could ever have been. And I found these three incredible athletes that have been ski race training for the last 10 years. They're of Jamaican descent, and most importantly, they're triplets. So I think this will be a fun story for us all to watch in 4 years' time.
That's great. Well, we will definitely be watching and looking forward to seeing more from you. Thank you so much, Benjamin, for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Please welcome to the stage your host for this morning, Global Editorial Director, Wired, Gideon Litchfield. And our panelists, Sakina Yakubi, President and Executive Director of the Afghan Institute of Learning, and Geshe Kururi Sabina, organizer of African Civic Tech Innovation Network.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, on this last day of Solve. Thank you, Geshe and Sakina, for joining me. We're here talking about young leaders on the horizon. And this topic connects very closely for me to a central motivating question for me as editor of Wired, which is, what does it take to make change happen? I come from the generation that grew up with the fall of the Soviet Union, and we believed certain things about the world. Everything was going to become more democratic, more liberal, more open, more equal, more globalized. And, you know, a generation later, a lot of those things no longer seem true. They seem to be going backwards, or maybe they were illusions in the first place. And so it becomes a question for the generation of leaders that are coming up today. How do they approach this world that we're in? They are tasked with a challenge of, in many cases, fixing or even just replacing systems that are much more broken than we thought they were, political and economic systems. How do they approach that task? How do they find the points of leverage, the points where they can affect change in those systems? And how do they rally support? How do they get people on board, particularly in a world where there is a lot of polarization and a very fragmented information ecosystem? How do they get people on to the same page and the same project? How do they overcome the cynicism of people like me? And how do they get the support of an older generation of leaders and supporters and the people like many of those in this room for their projects? And how, ultimately, finally, do they maintain hope and inspiration in a very complicated world? So those are the kind of, for me, the underlying questions that we're examining in this final session. So with me, I have Geshi and Sakina. And we'll talk a little bit about the work that they have both been doing in trying to motivate and inspire young leaders in the places where they work. So I'll start with you, Sakina. You have been building a network of learning centers and schools in Afghanistan since 1995. In fact, you came in just before the Taliban came into power in 1996. You started building. You have worked through the rise and fall of the Taliban, and then their rise again last year. Can you talk a little bit about how you maintain, how you inspire young people and women in particular in Afghanistan, how you give them hope for the future in over a very tumultuous period of time?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank MIT because I really believe that this is a floor that every one of the young people can just use as a role model and go around the world and do their work. Where I start and how I work with the young people. First of all, over the 30 years, I have been working with thousands and thousands of young people and trying to create that how they can their goal focus and how they can reach that goal. And to doing that, I just want to share with you what we have done in Afghanistan. First of all, in 1995, when I was in the refugee camp, I went there and to just look and to see what's going on. And once I got there, and that was the time that when I look around and I saw the situation and I saw the environment and I saw the young people and I saw the hopelessness in their eyes and their way that they were sitting and thinking. And that moment, I felt it that this is going to determine my future for my life, what I'm going to do here. Since then, that was my goal. And working there and finding out that those women and children that was in the refugee camp, they didn't have any hopes at all. And when the human being doesn't have hopes, and then their mind is not functioning, and they are not really having a dream. So how we are going to create a dream for people that they have their dream back, and by educating them. So that was the time that we decided that create a school in the refugee camp. In the refugee camp, creating a school at that time, it was impossible also. And because a lot of people did not want to get education, they did not want, especially women and girls, to be educated. So trying to work our way and negotiate with the elder of the camp, with the people, and try to convince them that yes, education is the issue, that it can help people. So finally we overcome that and we start with education. But starting with education also, it was a goal to work with people. But really, did I want it to work in the area of health? No, really, my plan wasn't to work on the area of health. But once the need comes, then you just make a decision that moment that there is a need, we have to work on that. And then you create a program that it's fit your need. And that is, we did start working in the health issue, and we built clinics. And then after that, and we just keep working. As the need comes, you think about it. You don't just wait to somebody tell you, we want this, or can you do that? You just see the need, and then you act on it. And that is, I really want to share, especially in the area that when you are desperate and when you see the needs that people are starving for that needs. And sometimes devastated situation, that makes you to break your heart, and tears comes for your eyes, but you wipe that tears and you just go ahead and you focus on your goal, because you want those people to be educated, you want those people to be empowered, you want those people to be self-defense, you want that people to be encouraged, and you want those people to have determination. And for that purpose, you just keep focus, and no matter which government comes and which government goes, how the program, how the system collapses, you just start from zero ground and go backward. And that's not easy. It's not an easy task, but it needs something that we all must to know that it's our goal. It's not somebody else's goal. And if it's our goal, it's come from my heart. It comes with love. It comes with, wisdom. It comes with something that I believe in it. And so if it comes from you, so it is you that you are going to make that is going to happen. But if somebody else tells you what to do, or somebody else gives you a project to do that, then that is going to create a problem for you, because you are not, your heart is not in it, and you are not there. So one thing that my advice for the new generation is that always focus your goal, and focus on your goal, and it's be your goal. No matter what it comes, then you can keep going. And that is we have been doing with the young people. Thousands and thousands of young people have been working with me, and through different sectors, through education, through health, through media. For example, I never was planning to have a media, and as the need comes, we start having a TV station, and we start having a radio station. And also the radio station become like our advertise, because during the pandemic, that was the only way that we could spread the news all over Afghanistan and tell people how to take care of themselves, because people didn't know how to take care of themselves. And the same thing right now, the TV station. And right now we are in crisis. You know that the school in Afghanistan all has been closed, and the people are devastated, and people are dying from all kinds of, abuse. So what we do, we use the TV station, we use our media, we change our curriculum, we shift the curriculum from what was in school to broadcast over the TV, a lesson plan that the students can sit in front of their TV and watch and learn how to study. But yes, there is an issue of electricity, there was issue internet, but we are trying to somehow manage that. Once you focus on your goal, then you work around that and you create things. As an entrepreneur, I always look at things in a different way. It's not just only one straight way. You have to have a vision, you have to have a imagination, you have to have creativity and innovation. And you combine all those things, and then according to that, you just try to work on your goal, and that is the way you reach. We have a youth group, we have a different kind of youth group that they are involved in. They are doing, they are doing like facilitate, going from community to community, building community, because you just start the program by building community, by having relationship with people. People trust you and you trust them, and from that then you go on, because if you don't have the people behind you, you could not function in those countries, especially in a harsh country like ours, that every day there is a system is changing one from the other, and some group come invade us and they want something for themselves, and then they leave and the other group come invade us and then they want something else. It's a power struggle. So we are sitting in our corner and we focus on education in our youth, because I believe in youth. I see the potential. I love the youth. Somebody asked me that a few hours ago that how do you get courage? How do you do your work in such an environment? And I tell you one thing, that it's given me courage. It's my faith. And the second thing, looking through the young face of those people, young generation, they give me hope. They give me energy. They give me energy that I just keep going. Otherwise, in my age, these days, right now, my program is functioning inside Afghanistan. 1,200 people are working. We have reached 14.5 million people in area of education, in area of health, in area of advocacy, in area of legal work, and also food distribution, humanitarian assistance. We were not a humanitarian organization. As the needs comes, we just act on it. That is my final point for the young people, that don't wait for something to come. You just act on it on your stake, and also know that you will be able to do it because you are focusing on it. And so we were not humanitarian organization, but as the need comes, we start working on it. Thousands and thousands of dollars we gave as a human assistant for shelter, for clothing, for food, and we are running the same thing still.
Right. They certainly give you a lot of energy, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But there's a central message there. Focus on the goal, have it very clear, don't be distracted by environments, circumstances that are trying to push you off the path. So Geshe, you've obviously also been working in the field of academia and education, but you're coming at it with a more, I think, supporting civic tech, social entrepreneurship. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you've been doing and what it is that you feel creates the frameworks for young people to succeed and keep their faith?
Yeah, and just really appreciating this push to focus. I think I need to listen to that too. So we've been working with young civic tech innovators across Africa, and I've consistently sort of tried to challenge them with three main messages. And the first one, and it's so good to hear it repeated so many times through this conference and this stage, is this issue about decolonizing imagination, that we really need to sort of really own that. We've tended in the fields of development across many domains to reproduce the problems we're trying to solve, and that's largely because we don't always call these anticipatory assumptions, these constraints we have to imagination. And it's been great to hear on this stage activists, business people, artists kind of repeat this. We need different narrative starting points, and it's so important for young people to have the freedom to do that. That's freedom.
Can you talk about some specific examples of constraints on the imagination that you encounter that we need to break through?
So here's the thing. So technology, for example, always sounds like it's bringing something new. But an example I like to give when I'm asked this question, I do a lot of urban work. And so you'd hear a lot about people thinking about blockchain applications, for example, around urban issues and urban property markets. And the question that I would ask is, there's an efficiency question that people think we're addressing around property markets, but I live and I've lived in countries where the property markets don't work for the majority. So why are you trying to make them more efficient? Why are you trying to optimize them? You could use the very same technology to actually disrupt and imagine different kinds of relationships with land and different kinds of relationships with property. Same technology, different imaginary. So again, the courage to have ideas that sound a little bit wacky, like we were told on the first day, but that are really about understanding and appreciating that certain things in our communities aren't working, and it doesn't make sense to keep patching onto them and trying to optimize them. We've really got to drive change and believe, and especially for young people, to believe you're not there to be schooled out of understanding problems that you see. Those problems are real, and we don't have solutions, and the solutions don't lie within the box. So I think that's probably one example I'd give. The second one is really around inclusion, and that's one of the things I'm really proud of what Solve is doing here, because I think part of what they're demonstrating is something I feel very strongly about, which is radical inclusion. As clever as we might be here in Cambridge, you're not going to have people, a few people, a club of a few people, a few clever people solving things for everybody in the world. There are too many problems, they're too complex, they're too contextual. You've got to really unleash genius everywhere. And we've systematically, again, put in too many constraints to thinking about how innovation happens. And I always say inclusion can't be the goal of what we're doing. Inclusion has to be the process of what you're doing, who's doing it, and it has to happen not in one place, but in many places. We've got to work together. We've got to center humans, but we've also got to center participation and inclusion in the process of doing things. Again, the technology enables us to do that may have seemed difficult previously. And I love in the civic tech space that I'm seeing that spirit, the spirit of understanding that you don't solve for people. And the last one is really a difficult one for young people, I think, is the issue of institutions. So often, even if you could think new things and do things differently, you come up against institutions that don't want to change, won't change. That inertia is powerful, it's frustrating, it can beat you down. And we've got to deal with that. And I think organizing in different ways, I think engaging, flattening those hierarchies, challenging those hierarchies, advocating has to be part of what you're doing. You can't just develop solutions and win with that, because you're not then changing the game, and the rules of the game have to change. So
Yes.
I'm not just for the unicorns and the darlings and the champions. We need, and I think I've heard a few people again allude to this, you've got to raise a whole community. And
Yeah.
to do that, you've got to shift the institutions.
I think, so this is a question I'm going to come back to later in the next panel with Thanasi, but it's, I think, the perennial dilemma of any young leader or change maker. How much do they work outside the system, and how much do they try to work within it? How do you do inclusion, bringing in the new voices? How do you work with institutions without the institutions taking over or reshaping or breaking down the way that you work, or forcing it into their own frameworks?
Well, I give you an example. For example, right now the system is a way that they are completely ban education for girls, and no girls can go to school. But to really talk and negotiate your way around, it takes innovation and imagination, and how to do it that not be affected and not be killed by it. It is a issue that it's a very delicate issue, but then it's involved thousands of people life on that. So we try to say, okay, we had the curriculum of a school is going to school. We had set up a school, many schools. We have children going to school. All of a sudden, everybody has to sit home and not go to school. So what we did, we said, okay, right now we have Women Learning Center. Women Learning Center is an app that all the women come and learn a skill, and they be empowered, and they are learning literacy, all kinds of things. So, and it taught by women. So we saw that is open. As soon as we said, okay, now we create the curriculum of a school, integrate into the curriculum of Women Learning Center. And we did that. As soon as we did that, in a matter of 2 weeks, thousands of young girls poured into our Women Learning Center. We were ready for it? No, we were not ready. Did we have a finance for it? No, we didn't. But did we wait for it? No, we didn't wait. We said, okay, this is the curriculum. We developed it, and we integrated it, and we opened the door for people. We have 632 Women Learning Center in 16 provinces of Afghanistan. Every one of them, we said, okay, let the girls get in. All the girls in Afghanistan are going there? No, it's just a minority, very little. But we let the door open, and then we said the fund is going to come, and we look for it. And as soon as we did that, people's mind was like this. And our young people especially, they got so excited, they got so involved that everybody who were devastated, who were crying, men and women, not only women, men and women were crying, they were running away from the country, they didn't know what to do. They get into the women's center and they come. And so we said, we create another center for men, so they can come and learn. And that is the way you work your way, because you don't wait for the system, otherwise the system will never allow us. And even the previous government, 20 years of two new government that we had, they didn't do that much for our country, and billions of dollars went to Afghanistan. Nobody did anything for Afghanistan. So the point is that they are struggling for power, and they are getting after that chair. But we, as a social group, we want to really find something that is good for the public.
Yes.
We are reaching the unreachable. We are reaching the poorest the poor. For example...
I would love to give Geshe just a little word in Ajuez on this, because we're almost out of time. But
No, I think I completely support that. It's so difficult. I spent 20 years trying to work in big institutions because I wanted to make big change, and you think that that's where you do it. And then you learn a lot. And you get beat down, and you get beat down. And a lot of what I'm trying to do now in my slightly older, more jaded years, is in a way to use the relationships, because I was able, I suppose, by working in the public sector to develop certain understandings and certain relationships. And a lot of what I try to do now is almost to intermediate, to link into those, to support the civic work of people who don't have that access, because I do believe we have to change those institutions. Otherwise, it's kind of pitting things against each other, and you're constantly just battling. And I think there has to be a different relationship. And at least in many African countries, I think that's kind of where I see the opportunity. Work outside the system, but understand that you also have to leverage and you have to shift that system. It's got to work for the people.
yes, I'm really sorry that we are so out of time so quickly, but it's wonderful having you both on the stage. Thank you so, so much.
Please welcome Geeta Shahrani, Chief of Partnerships, Alam Siak Lestari.
During this global pandemic, we are all thinking about our immunity. I'm Geeta Shahrani from Alam Siak Lestari, Indonesia, and I'm also thinking about the same thing. Not only my own immune system, but the world's greatest immune system, the $16.1 billion worth of immune system of our peatland, the greatest carbon storage out there. This is the amount that Indonesia had to suffer during the Great Fire incident on peatland in 2015. Since then, the government have actually issued strict regulation in order to protect and conserve the peat. However, at least 35% of communities that's living within and surrounding the deep peat ecosystem in our district in Siak, Riau, is still struggling to find livelihood options that are peat-friendly, including Pak Sudin, one of our villager in Rawa Mekarjaya village. His other options are planting palm oil or acacia, where he'd have to drain the peat, making it a big fire hazard. One thing that Pak Sudin and majority of the peat community has in common is this in their backyard, the canal blockage that are normally treated as dormant village area, but is actually critical to maintain the peat water management, to prevent fire, and actually, if you keep species there and keep it healthy, you will boost the protein level. Now, through hill fisheries, we actually leverage on this asset, and we try to promote community livelihood by having value-added products from peat-friendly commodities. One of this is fish. And we target health and nutrition sectors, implementing native peat species products that are also friendly to the peat community. In our company, local communities are becoming executives, they're becoming scientists, they're becoming producers, and even the shareholders. Hill fisheries develop methods to cultivate peat not only from the regular ponds, but also fish directly in the peat conservation area. In parallel, we are inspired by the local tradition of where the community would steam the fish and get benefit for post-surgery remedies and also immune booster. We built low-temperature distillation method to extract protein and albumin from the actual fish, keeping it alive and keeping the peat also healthy. Now, we are also treating our waste in a circular manner, having it as natural fertilizers for the surrounding villages. We're also promoting our method and our technology in the surrounding villages, making it a movement of STEM education. In 5 years, we aim to expand to at least 3 more local innovation centers, integrating at least 10 more fire-prone villages around the area, and protecting at least 16,000 hectares worth of peat area. We are Alam Siak Lestari, a proud community enterprise from Indonesia. We protect peat, we boost local economy, and we heal nation. We are providing you with the options of protecting our immune system while also protecting our ecosystem. Thank you.
And now, please welcome to the stage Casey Vander, Principal, Solve Innovation Future, MIT Solve.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We launched Solve Innovation Future in 2019 to support solver teams in their efforts towards scale. Structured as a donor-advised fund, we make seed and Series A investments in solver teams. We work hard to meet the needs of these teams, structuring entrepreneur-friendly investments, acting as an impact-focused co-investor, but-for funder, and debt provider where appropriate. Our goal is to provide flexible, risk-tolerant capital to amplify impact and accelerate growth. I'm proud to share that in the 24 months of our active investment, we've made 8 investments, and excited to announce that as of today, we have 2 additional investments joining our portfolio and our family. 2020 solver Smartfish, who use a value rescue model of fishing to improve fisher livelihoods, conserve marine ecosystems, and offer responsible choices to consumers. 2021 solver team Macarize is also joining the family, a distribution central command for pandemic response. AI technology predicts system capacity and makes recommendations to optimize the allocation of scarce health resources. With these 2 investments under our belts, in total, we will have deployed just about $1 million. And we're especially proud that for every dollar we've dispersed, we've catalyzed 4 towards our investees. We're headquartered in 8 countries, and our investees have raised more than $40 million in the past 12 months. We've served over 9 million individuals, and we're really just looking forward to the next step of this journey, and we hope that all of you can be a part of that with us. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to one of our new investees, Javier Van Collert, CEO of Smartfish. Please join me in welcoming Javier to the stage. Awesome. Javier, they've heard from me. They know what I do. I would love if you could introduce Smartfish to the crowd.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? Smartfish is what we do is that we work with fishermen so they can earn more fishing less. We are a hybrid company, an NGO and a commercial business. I run the business, and over there somewhere is Ceci, that she runs the NGO. We work with fishermen so they can improve the quality of the fish, they can process the fish, and we can bring more steps of the value chain to the co-ops, to the fishermen. And then we open stores, and we are the last or the only intermediary between the fishermen and the market. In that way, we can pay them between 40% more and maybe 200% more, and reach the market at a very competitive price.
I think it's really interesting what Javier is describing with respect to the hybrid model, and it certainly is something that many of the entrepreneurs in the room have explored, is thinking about what does that model look like, and how do I think about both the business component of what I'm doing and my impact component, and how do I actually legally structure the entity to be able to accelerate impact. Can you share a little bit more about the intermediation that happens as a result of your nonprofit and for-profit arm, and how that has an impact on the broader ecosystem you're serving?
The intermediation between us?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the company was created by the NGO because they needed a good intermediary to go into the market. They tried different solutions, and it didn't work, so they created the company, and then we became the market for the fishermen. And at the beginning, we were more mixed in how we managed the money and everything. Right now, we are 2 separate entities working with the same objective, but each entity receives or looks for the money for themselves.
Yeah, which is, I think, a pretty interesting solution to figuring out how do you continue to drive that impact. And from your mind, working on the for-profit side of the house, how do you think about impact in your day-to-day work?
Impact in what we do?
Yeah.
That's what we do, right?
Yeah.
We were created for that, and we always think on growing and keep having a business that can be an example to other business that you can do, that you can create profit by working with sustainable seafood.
Yeah. And one of the things that Javier and I talked a lot about through this process of investment was thinking a lot of the trends, at least in the US, are for organizations that are looking to disintermediate, right? Are looking to your Warby Parkers or your Everlanes or some of these consumer-facing products that are saying, no, the market is too crowded, and therefore our way of having impact will be going direct to the source and kind of clearing out the market. For you, in some ways, you're re-intermediating the market by acting as the coordinator between the fishers and the store. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, we believe that intermediaries are necessary we need to change the way the intermediation is done. The intermediary is very important in the value chain, and they have to exist, but they have to become good intermediaries. They have to work more transparent, with more transparency to the producers. They have to build a model that will leave more money in the producer side and not in the intermediation side.
Yep. And how do you pitch that into investors? When you were thinking about raising capital and you're describing this, how did you pitch that story?
I mean, I usually talk about what we do, and show them that we have a very traditional model of business because we have stores, physical stores. But I always ask them for patient money and a low interest rate, because when we want to create capacity with the fishermen, for example, it would take the NGO maybe a year to bring a co-op from where they are now to the quality that we need, and we cannot pay for that. And the stores are very, I mean, they produce income, but then you don't have a very large margin. So we ask for capital that is patient and low interest rate.
Yeah. And how did you find, we know how you found Solve, and I think one of the fun parts about our investment that I'll share with this group is that we've co-invested with the Conservation International team to help drive more dollars towards Javier and Cecilia and the work that the Smartfish team is doing. How did that, talk a little bit about how that partnership developed?
Well, we started with Solve working, and we met people from Conservation International at another place, and they were willing to look into our model and to lend us money. And they lend us $400,000 to open stores, and we have agreements with them about impact metrics that we have to cover. And then when we were at Solve, we were talking with you all the time, and you were very like you were always listening to what we need. You never said, this is what we do, and you have to fit in that model. So you were always listening, and then sometime when we got the Conservation International, then everything just speed up, and we got the money from Solve.
Yeah, and from our perspective, having investors that are aligned, we know that makes it easier for you, and we believe that makes it easier to run the business and scale and hopefully achieve the impact goals that you're doing.
Yeah, I don't think we can scale without that help, without the money.
Right, right. So tell us, beyond the money is obviously the necessary, it's not sufficient. What would you say to other investors in the room around what partnerships and what support you can provide beyond the
well, connections, learning, there's a lot of things. In 2021, we were named one of the 50 best SMEs companies in the world by United Nations.
Yeah.
And I think it had to do that we were part of Solve, and we are a big corp also.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of connection, there's a lot of learning. Just by being here, we are learning a lot. So I think that's even not more important because we need both, but they have to go together.
Yeah.
And I think people that will give you money, but will give you other things like will join you in the journey will be great.
Yeah. Well, we are really excited to be on this journey with you. Yeah. We are honored to be a part of the Smartfish family, and we're excited to share more of our investments with this group in the future. So thank you so very much for working together.
Bye.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. It's been fun for me to get to introduce you a little bit to Javier and to some of the work that we do. Moving from my work at Solve Innovation Future, I'm over the moon to introduce you to one of my colleagues. Sarah Montebarro is Director of Strategic and Partner Programs at Solve, and please welcome me in joining to welcome her to the stage. I think that's how that one went. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Casey, and congratulations to the Solve Innovation Future organizations. On Solve's Strategic and Partner Programs team, we also have the pleasure of working with some equally fantastic organizations through our custom challenges. This is where we leverage our best-in-class methodology from Solve to host bespoke open innovation challenges. We've worked with dozens of world-leading organizations, including corporations, foundations, multilaterals, and other academic institutions, as you can see on the screen, who come to us for help in running their own open innovation challenges. This is a way for us to help these organizations to realize their social and environmental impact goals. To date, we've brokered over $30 million in committed funding through our custom challenges to entrepreneurs from across the globe. If you're interested in running your own social impact program through the custom challenge model, I invite you to reach out to me or a member of the Solve team. And now, it is my great pleasure to share a few updates from two of our custom challenge partners, the Caterpillar Foundation and the Octava Foundation, who will now announce the winners of the Future of Work in India and Indonesia Challenge, as well as the Octava Social Innovation Challenge. Please enjoy.
Hello, Solve at MIT. My name is Asha Verghese, President of the Caterpillar Foundation. I'm delighted to be here today to announce the winners of the Caterpillar Foundation's challenge on the future of work in India and Indonesia. The Caterpillar Foundation partnered with MIT Solve to identify and support innovative workforce development solutions that will help workers who have been displaced by automation and other technology-driven transformations. Our judges have been hard at work, deliberating and selecting a group of outstanding finalists and now winners. These winning teams meet the challenge of enabling workers in India and Indonesia to participate in the economy of the future, from upskilling women from their homes to gamified skill acquisition for garment workers to industry-relevant vocational teacher curriculums. Without further ado, I am thrilled to announce the 5 winners: Shimmy Upskill, Colas, Pratibha Screening and Training Tool, Rani Jobs, and Asia Initiative's Upskilling Cascades. A huge congratulations to all who participated in this challenge, especially to our winners who will receive funds from the nearly 400,000 pool and a tailored support program to further their impact and scale their solutions. On behalf of the Caterpillar Foundation, we are excited to work with you.
Hello, Solve at MIT. My name is Raman Sidhu. I'm part of Octava Foundation, a private grant maker based in Singapore. I'm delighted to announce the winners of the Octava Social Innovation Challenge, which asked, how can EdTech solutions improve learning outcomes for underserved learners in Southeast Asia, while being affordable and accessible? We are humbled and inspired by over 120 applications received. 10 exceptional teams were selected as winners. Each winning team has received $50,000 in funding and a 10-month support program implemented by MIT Solve. I'm thrilled to introduce the 10 winners of Social Innovation Challenge by Octava. In no particular order: Bookbot, Cerebri, Doyobi, I Can Do, Kipin ID, Qubits, Let's Read, Pandai Education, SparkKit, last but not the least, Pemimpin and Inspirasi, training school leaders in Malaysia and Indonesia. Congratulations to the team, and we look forward to working with you in the coming months ahead.
Please welcome back to the stage moderator for our closing fireside chat, Gideon Litchfield, and Thanasi Delos, co-founder and CGO, Civics Unplugged.
All right, hello and welcome back again. So Thanasi, you are leading a movement for social change, civic engagement, and what you're doing is enabling young people to form projects that are around civics and civic education and, well, I don't know. Why am I telling people what are you doing? You tell us what you're doing. What are you enabling people to do, and can you give us some examples of the kinds of things that they're doing?
Yeah, for sure. We are all about a term civic innovation, right? I think that the term activism or the term civic education have these contexts behind them that people's brains automatically snap, and they're like, okay, I know what you're doing. It's not that interesting. It's been done over and over again. Move on. Civic innovation, though, is this idea that a young person or any person can find where their passion and their individual skills align with their community's needs so that they can truly make change. It's all about emerging technology, it's all about new forms of education, and it's all about giving agency to young people. And so Civics Unplugged works in all 50 states and 74 countries around the globe. We serve 1,000 fellows a year through our Civic Innovation Fellowship program. that teaches not only new systems and new ways to make change, but also teaches personal development. A lot of these young people are operating in silos. They don't think that there's any other young people that are doing the same work that they're doing, that care about the same things that they're doing. And so we're all focused on giving them a community and the personal development skills so that they feel that they are able to be leaders, either right now or 10 years from now. And then after they graduate from the program, we give them grants, no matter where they are in the world, to pursue a civic innovation project in their own community. A lot of what Civics Unplugged is giving the power to the kids. So the grants are all decided by the Civics Unplugged community. It's a democratic vote. That's where the funding is distributed. I have no say. I have like one vote, which sometimes sucks. Listen, these young people know what their communities need. They are the point of contact. I don't know what communities anywhere other than my community needs, and so I shouldn't be the one deciding what these kids are doing and how the money is spent. So we give them the money, we give them the mentorship, the agency, but after that, it's up to them to change the world. So that's CU.
And what kinds of things are they doing? Can you give us like 2 or 3 examples?
Yeah. So in our first cohort, we had this wonderful human, Zoe Jenkins, who's actually coming back to Civics Unplugged to work with us over a couple time off from college. She started a youth-led diversity, equity, and inclusion fellowship and curriculum that started in Kentucky, because that's where she's from. It expanded to the US through CU's network, and then Civics Unplugged went international by mistake, which is another story. But her organization, DICE, started serving young people in Southeast Asia, because the fellows from Southeast Asia saw Zoe's curriculum and saw what Zoe was doing in CU, and were like, we can use this as a foundation to solve some of the problems that we have. And so we funded both DICE United States and DICE South Asia. Both are still running. We have young people working on distributed voting and decentralized voting technology that helps people access polling and vote online. We have young people working to get people to the polls, traditional democracy work. And then we have some really fascinating things in regenerative economics, regenerative agriculture, and farming that young people are focused on. There's a lot of work in distributed technology, blockchain, Web3 that we fund. So it's pretty much all over the place, but all led by kids under the age of 21.
So what is the... Hey. What do you think is the unmet need that Civics Unplugged meets? What is it that you're making available to kids that they're not able to get from any number of other funding organizations or philanthropies or whatever?
Yeah. I think we have all recognized, especially the folks in this room, that there are problems we need to solve. That's not a very insightful comment that I've made. Everybody knows that. But what we haven't solved are the underlying issues. If we want to solve these new problems, we have to give the power to people who understand new technologies, social networks especially, and how the world is changing. And those are the young people. However, my generation is the most probably depressed, the most affected by mental health, the most disconnected generation that has ever walked the earth. And so when you look at all of these organizations, funding is great for young people, but what's really also important is community and agency. Civics Unplugged strives to connect these young people and make them feel that they are working together to solve a common issue instead of working in silos. It's one thing to give a bunch of funding to a young person and say, well, we helped you change the world, but really we need to be tackling these underlying issues of a lack of community among young people and among everybody, a lack of trust in our systems and in each other as people, a lack of faith in ourselves and our personal ability to do things. And so Civics Unplugged at its core is solving a crisis of community. We are trying to be the community for young people that want to provide community to their friends, to their towns, to their cities, to their countries.
When we were talking earlier, you talked a bit about this question of trust. And you said there is this problem of distrust that traditional philanthropies have towards young people who are looking for funding for projects.
Yeah, I think all philanthropy and all just financial exchanges right now operate in the assumption of distrust. They assume that everybody is being a little bit snaky on the back end, which I mean exists for a reason. But when it comes to funding youth movements and funding social change, there needs to be trust on both sides. There needs to be trust from the philanthropy side or from the funder side, but there also needs to be trust the other way around. And so when I think about what we need to do to make change, it's a lot about my personal story. I would not have founded Civics Unplugged had it not been for 2 adults in my life who gave me trust and agency. They never gave me money. They never gave me $1, but they allowed me to have faith in myself and believe in myself to take a huge risk. And what Civics Unplugged is trying to scale that to all the kids that we serve. And so when a philanthropy is thinking about funding youth movements, it's not just about the money, but it's also going to each individual person you're funding and saying, we're putting our network behind you, we're putting our name behind you, and I personally am putting my energy into making you succeed. Because that feeling in a young person is priceless. You can't, no amount of money does that for a young person. But everybody in this room, I see a lot of adults and a lot of young people. If you turn around and you say, well, what's one young person in my life and how do I make them feel that they can change the world? Like that's the biggest thing.
Right. So it sounds like Civics Unplugged is saying to young people, like, we're like you, we believe in you, here's some support, go away and do something wonderful. And then some of these people are going to build projects that then grow. They're going to start seeking funding probably from a wider range of more traditional sources. So now let me play the role of the philanthropist. I say, young man, this blockchain voting idea of yours is awfully newfangled. What do you know about the world? How on earth do you think that you can reform this entire system? Why should I give you my money? When you come across that kind of relationship, and in particular,
that was really, really well done. Amazing.
Years of education to get that. But you are encountering, as I said in my earlier comments, like a somewhat disillusioned generation of people like me who think, well, the world is a really messy place. It's a really complicated place, partly our fault. Who are these kids coming in who think that they can just upend it all and reinvent it? So how do you, I guess, bridge that gap?
Great question. I think that a lot of, at one point, me too, like, it seems adversarial. It's like young people are coming, they're like tearing down the system, they're saying like, it's our turn, it's everything. And I'm like, I don't think that's actually the way to achieve change. And I don't know if that's the common like thought, but change happens intergenerationally. And like Civics Unplugged, the whole point, like my team members are adults and young people, and we work together. And we make sure that everybody in the CU community recognizes that the only way to make change is an intergenerational effort. So when we're going to those funders or when we're going to those venture capitalists, it's not the kid coming and saying, oh, this was my idea, I did this myself, because no one is formed, no one is self-made, everyone's made in community. And the Civics Unplugged community is adults and young people. And so when we approach these funders, they actually have a lot of trust because they're like, wow, it's not just a group of kids that thinks they can change the world. I actually think a lot of the kids in Civics Unplugged have grounded themselves into changing the small things instead of trying to change the entire world. But it's also this group of adults who has backed these kids from the beginning, from before they had the idea, who have been there every step of the way guiding them. And so we don't just put our trust in the kid, we put our trust in the adult and they're essentially their board of life that has been backing them for years. Right. And that's the important part. Because I agree with you, like, you see me sitting on stage, you see any young person talking about changing the world, and you're like, what do they know? They've been alive for 19 years. Like, they know nothing. And to a point, I agree. It's like, we don't have all the answers, but we do have some new ideas and some creative ways of changing the world, but we need help. And so I think that the real answer is, like, you do it together, and you embrace intergenerational change. It's the only option that's left.
Yeah. I like this phrase that you used earlier, made in community. Because I think the traditional ethos of the tech world certainly was built around the founder, the visionary, the individual, who sure pulls in a team and builds up, but is a leader. And it strikes me that you're coming from a somewhat different ethos, and we're going to talk in a second about decision making as well, but this ethos of things not happening because of individuals, things happening because of community. So the first question I have is, how do the people in Civics Unplugged or your communities, how do they build and maintain community? How are they using tech to maintain community? How are they creating and nurturing and maintaining community so that this kind of collective action can happen?
Yeah, I think that the ethos of the founder was like such a great story, and it caught people's attention. But in reality, like any of the great founders or non-great founders that you can think of, were any of them self-made? Like, all of them, you're telling me, never had a parent or an adult or a partner or someone like push them forward, never had anyone that they talked to when they were about to quit. Like, no one is made by themselves, and having a strong community is so important. The way we think about community building at Civics Unplugged, especially digital community building, right? There are kids from all 50 states, like I said, 70-something countries now. And there's a lot of people who don't think the same, and we embrace that. You know, the reason that kids come to the Civics Unplugged community is not necessarily the reason they stay, but we have set a strong North Star of civic innovation and trust across everybody. It's an entirely horizontal community, right? Everybody has one vote, and those like central foundational principles of the community have led us to be able to have a continuation of like new people come in, old people leave, the ethos is still there, and it's also, you know, one kid might come because they want to get into Harvard and they would think this is great on their resume. Another kid might come because they want funding. We have a ton of kids that come because they just want to hang out with other teenagers that like love technology and they can't find that. So they all come for different reasons, but they all stay for another reason, which is I found my friends, I found lifelong partners, and I also found hope. I think that's the only way a community sustains is if you have a North Star of hope.
Right.
And we work really hard as a team to try and kindle that.
Let's talk about the one person, one vote, the decentralized decision making. So obviously some of the stuff you're doing, the Dream Dao is it's the idea of a Web3 blockchain-based, presumably, form of decision making. There's obviously a lot of excitement around Web3. A lot of people are trying to apply this kind of decision making to many, many sorts of projects. And there's also a lot of skepticism about Web3 being a bubble, a Ponzi scheme, or certain aspects of it being a Ponzi scheme. But can you talk a little bit about why you think decentralized decision-making, whether it's on a blockchain or not, maybe leave blockchain aside, decentralized decision-making as a protocol, as an approach, as a philosophy, why is it so important?
Yeah, to give some context, so Civics Unplugged itself is civic innovation, civics, leadership, nothing to do with blockchain. But a lot of what we found is members of my generation think already in a very decentralized way. They think in a very horizontal form of leadership, they think collaboratively, and they embrace new technologies. Like they understand the way cryptocurrency works better than a lot of people do, naturally. And so we figured, well, what does it look like if Civics Unplugged supported one of the first philanthropic, nonprofit-led, decentralized organizations powered by blockchain? What if we let the kids build it and launch it, and we just gave them the funding? And so we did that in November. It's called the Dream Dao, and the entire goal is to provide young people the foundation, the capital, and the network to dive into Web3, specifically blockchain and social impact. So we get them internships, we fund their projects, and it's a very small part, growing, of what we're doing at Civics Unplugged. And the reason we did that is because you have to embrace emerging technologies, and you have to give young people the opportunity to play and understand if they don't like it or not. I had to do it, everybody has to do it. And when it comes to decentralized decision making, let's zoom out of Web3, right? The ethos of Web3, decentralized ownership, trust, like none of that needs a blockchain to exist. None of that needs cryptocurrency to exist. But the ethos is actually really important and very different from what we are traditionally seeing, especially in nonprofits. And so Civics Unplugged was built to be decentralized and autonomous and run by the kids from the jump. We just didn't use tokens and didn't call it a DAO because it wasn't cool back then. And but the trust that it's given, like these kids, they know that they can propose to the community if they want to change anything. They know that they have true ownership. And when you give people ownership of a community, they stay. They contribute more. They feel like it's theirs, right? If you're just a kid going through like a high school, think about it. You go through for 4 years, you graduate, maybe you give back, maybe you come back, but you never felt like, I can make this better. This is my school, right? But Civics Unplugged is truly like, it's my organization. It's my nonprofit. So it makes them more engaged. It makes them more creative. And the fact that they know they can propose something, and if it gets passed, we support their work, like it sets the ceiling so high that all of these great ideas are just incubated and coming out on a daily basis.
Yeah. I'm going to try to ask you a question I'm not even sure if I can ask coherently. So even less likely that you'll be able to answer it coherently. But let's give it a go. Because I think a lot about the future of democracy and where it's going. And in particular, in this country, we're seeing the two-party system and everything that it has built increasingly unable to function effectively for the world that we live in. Increasingly polarized, obviously, increasingly stuck trying to take decisions that are for the good of a country that keep pace with the change of technological innovation, with the misinformation, all of that stuff. And obviously in the Web3 space, there are a lot of people who think that new technologies can be a way to revolutionize the idea of democracy, to have new forms of democratic participation. So I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, do you have any ideas or thoughts on how the kinds of projects that are coming out of Civics Unplugged might play into the future of democracy, or how they might, what kind of intersection there might be with between these very decentralized, youth-led kinds of decision-making processes and the very hierarchical institutional ones that we have in our traditional democratic institutions? Did that make any sense?
Yeah, I think. And maybe my answer will be even more clouded. Civics Unplugged and the projects we incubate right now are great, but really we're trying to give young people the freedom to fail and learn early. If you think about founders in the room, philanthropists in the room, just young people in the room, imagine if you started 10 years before you actually started pursuing your passion. Imagine if you started 20 years, 30 years. That's what Civics Unplugged is. And so maybe some of these projects will last 30 years and change the face of democracy. That I don't know. What I do know, though, is that the kids that we are serving will be the future chief innovation officers in their city or their country, or the civic officers in their corporations. And that's what we're really geared up towards. Right? The projects right now, most of them are great and they're amazing, but they're not the majority of Kids Civics Unplugged. We work with 1,000 fellows a year. The majority of them are the first in their families to go to college. The majority of them are living in countries that don't have a democratic system to fix. And so, you know, what we're trying to do is inspire them and set on this lifelong journey. Like Civics Unplugged is committed to supporting these kids until they are 90 and 100 years old. Hopefully we'll be around that long, but it's about giving them the sandbox to spark their passions early, and the funding to spark their passions early, and the network so that they can continue their passions for a while. And so maybe the projects will last, but what we're really focused on is like the individual fellow is a project in and of itself.
Yeah. Okay, so that I think you actually summarized what I was going towards, which is what I'm hearing is for people who are watching what you're doing, or who are watching what young people in general are doing, the message is don't judge the project, judge the person. Look at this person's energy, their interest, their enthusiasm, try to help them. If you don't be skeptical about the fact that this person is trying to build some kind of distributed voting system to upend democracy. Look at the efforts that they're making, at that learning process, at how you can support that, how you can support them in becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and most of the kids at Civics Unplugged aren't even working on blockchain. I think like a lot of them are working on traditional like interventions in their communities, getting civic education bills passed, making sure their schools are getting funding. One of them just joined the California State Board of Education at 17. Another one of them just gave a TED Talk in Vancouver. Like they're doing traditional change work. Yeah, just venture capitalists, right? They say the best investment strategy is invest in founders, right? You invest in the people will make the idea work. Why is that not also true in nonprofits and social and civic innovation? You know, my co-founder Josh comes from a venture capital background, and he has been one of my biggest mentors, but also shown me that like if you invest in a good founder, you will always get return. Might not be monetary return, but you'll always get some sort of return. Versus like if you're throwing money at ideas, maybe the ideas will survive, but like you have to invest in the whole person. That's why we teach personal development too. Like young people, where in high school are they getting the opportunity to figure out what their leadership skills are? Where are they getting the opportunity to figure out what their passions are? Where they found their passions? Where their parents guided their passions? They're not getting the opportunity to explore that. And so it's like, in that point itself, it's like avoiding a midlife crisis. It's like we're letting you learn all this now.
Right. Great. Wish I'd had that. Could have saved myself so many midlife crises. All right, we've got a few minutes for questions. So there are a couple of mics. Put your hands up if you want a question, to ask a question. And before that, I'm going to ask you one last thing from what we were discussing earlier. We talked about how you yourself navigate the space and the kind of the boundary between crazy and safe, or safe crazy. And can you talk a little bit about what it's been like for you, essentially trying to make your way and to balance, I guess, credibility with the excitement or with the inspiration of what you're offering?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, we started in 2019. If I was running around as a 17-year-old then kid telling people, digital first civic innovation fellowship for kids, where we also give them part of the decision of where we give $250,000 of capital every year, they would laugh me out of the room, and they did. It was really tough, but I think the paradigm has shifted. Like this entire event, Solve Ed, I was just saying outside, is one of the coolest and most like forward-thinking programs I've seen when it comes to supporting young people and young innovators, because it's not just slapping a logo on something and saying we supported that kid. It's actually investing the time and energy that it takes to develop a young leader from a really early age. And I think a lot of philanthropists, like I've been talking to a lot of funders, a lot of venture capitalists, a lot of just people in general have found that it is about supporting young people early, and it's become a lot easier. And I think we were talking about that safe crazy and like regular crazy. I think it's okay to say really crazy things, and I think it will be continuously okay to say like more outrageous things, but there are still like some things we don't want to touch on, like tokenization of youth movements, right? Like people should be able to ask questions like, I think blockchain's BS, right? Like I think that's all BS, and I think you're wasting these kids' time, and I think that's a valid point. And so I think we're pushing the paradigm of what is the safe crazy thing to say and like what conversations we can actually have, and I think as long as we're doing that, it's great, right? But there are always going to be things that are just too early.
All right, any questions for Thanasi? Somebody.
Wow, I'm just that good. Especially back there.
Oh, yes, over there. Thank you.
Is this on?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for the wonderful work that you're doing. It's outstanding. I'm wondering, having been involved in and observed several online voting systems that have failed for forces beyond the technology, like political blockades and other areas of resistance. I'm wondering if you have a perspective on what's going to finally crack the barrier to let's just pick the United States, crack the barrier to online voting in the U.S.
Culture change, probably. Why the reason that it's failed is because we're all operating with different versions of truth. We're all operating in different like universes of facts. And so if we can't like all get on the same page, how are we going to have a conversation about decentralized or distributed or online voting if we can't agree what the facts of the day are? I think there's a huge problem with misinformation in the United States. I think there's a huge problem with social media co-opting the minds of a lot of people and like sending them down a rabbit hole that they will never emerge from. And I think until we fix those problems, we'll never get to the conversation about how to vote online. So a lot of my work has actually been focused on like pulling back and thinking, I think social media and misinformation are one of the greatest risks to not just my generation, but every generation. And so how do we devote a lot of time and energy into fixing that? And I know a lot, like even the Obama Foundation now, that's their top focus area.
Any other questions?
We have 54 seconds. There's a counter here.
Oh, there.
Thank you. Hi. You mentioned when you're talking about resources to support young entrepreneurs about how you talk about it's people, it's financial. Can you talk a little bit about lessons you've learned on the risk side when it comes to, how much is too much, how little is too little, anything on the financial part?
For sure. I think what we've learned at Civics Unplugged is that it's not 0 to 100 with a lot of the young folks that we work with. Obviously, there are some unicorns, but a lot of it is starting small and understanding that it's a risk to drop out of school and do this. It's a risk to focus on it full time. They have high school, and so setting expectations and also giving them guidance. A lot of the reasons people go to college is because they need 4 years of guidance. They need structure, and so what we try to provide in high school is a little bit of structural help, advice. We go slow. There's you have $5,000, you unlock $10,000, you follow a path, you set milestones. A lot of things you learn later in life that we're just trying to skip that little period if they don't know that, and we're just trying to get that true. So I agree, it's a huge risk, and that's why we don't just dump capital and leave. You have to invest your time and energy in order to see the fruits come to bloom.
And with that, we are going to take our fruits off the stage.
Yeah.
And let this event move towards its blooming conclusion. Thank you so much, Thanasi.
Thanks, everyone.
Please welcome to the stage Sanjay Sarma, Vice President for Open Learning, MIT.
That was an amazing conversation. Can you imagine? Thanasi is 19. I think we're in good hands. But thank you, Thanasi and Gideon. It's also great to see, talking about young people, the great Solved challenge solvers, and all the incredible leaders, young leaders, about to take the bull by the horns as far as the world is concerned. So very exciting. I am on the steering committee of Solve, and it is really amazing to see what Solve has done, connecting socially conscious entrepreneurship, innovation with funders. And if you look at the mission of MIT, it lines up perfectly, which is research, which is education, and innovation. And this sort of happens across MIT. For example, if you look at MIT's design efforts in the developing world, D-Lab, it's all sort of in our spirit. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you very much. Really great to see you all here. Thanks for participating for the last 3 days, and apply for the next Solve Challenge. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage for one final time, Solve's Executive Director, Alex Zamuyal.
We did it! Thank you so much for your continued support, Sanjay, and a big thank you to all the amazing innovators and supporters of every age who joined us on the stage today to celebrate and support the work of young leaders doing the hard work day in and day out. So I hope the last 3 days have been inspiring and energizing in terms of the speakers you heard from, the members you connected with, and the great works our Solver teams are doing. More importantly, let this be the launchpad of connections that will turn into partnerships and opportunities for you and the Solver teams. And that through these partnerships, you can move more capital, more expertise, more resources to change the world. All of these great connections you made in the last 3 days mean nothing if you don't follow up and follow through and make them a reality. We invited you here today because we believe you're not talkers, but doers and partners. Connect with our Solver teams, fund them, mentor them, work with them, and help them do what they do best. Many of you asked how you can help Solve, and thank you for that. It's been an especially engaged group this year. You can support us by getting involved with our 2022 challenges, the care economy, re-engaging learners, climate, ecosystems and housing, and equitable health systems. You can consider putting together prize funding or committing in-kind resources for our new challenges, and join General Motors, the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation, the Vodafone Americas Foundation, and many more, and become prize funders. You can also become a mentor for the 2022 Solver teams who will be selected this September. And you can send us referrals of people who do the same work that we do or are trying to do here today. For the organizations, individuals, and investors who would like to get involved, do come to talk to Casey about Solve Innovation Future. And we have also some incredible in-person events coming up that we would love for you to join us. You probably saw this slide going on, and for those who attended the Indigenous and anti-racist sessions, you talked to the Solver teams. They will be back in Minneapolis on June 16th and 17th. Do get in touch with our team. You can submit your interest on the events page, but also talk to Aaron, talk to Alexander, talk to Genesis about this. It's going to be fantastic. And then finally, Solve Challenge Finals is September 18th. And this is where you will get to meet our 2022 Solver class and where we'll announce the prizes. That's going to take place in New York City on September 18th during UN General Assembly Week. So put it now on your calendar, please. Since the pandemic, we are all being more mindful about which events we travel to and which communities we join. So I want to thank everyone for choosing to be with us at Solver MIT and for your important roles in shaping the next chapter of social impact through innovation and partnership. So time for thank yous. First, let's thank all the Solver teams and Indigenous fellows. Second, thank you to our amazing sponsors, partners, members, and friends. We could not do this without you. Thank you to the entire MIT community, students, faculty, staff who support us year-round. And to President Reif, this is his last Solver MIT. We will miss him tremendously, but hope that he can now come and attend the events next year and be a participant. And then the biggest applause, if you will indulge me, is to the amazing Solve staff. You've been... They are still working right now, but they have worked incredibly hard, not just in the last few weeks to bring this event together, but also the last 5 years to make Solve the community that it is today. And there's always room for growth, so let me know if there's anything that we didn't do right and any ideas you have to improve. Don't hesitate. We take feedback really seriously. But we'll be emailing you a survey to that effect, so we're going to ask you. And do fill it out. Open innovation is powerful, not only because it provides a better way to solve some of the most complex challenges, but because it means everyone, everywhere, can be involved in improving their own community. So that's what I'm leaving you with, and I'm asking you to bring that message to your communities and to come solve with us. Happy solving and enjoy lunch.